If you decide you want to do a documentary for your final project, you're going to need to interview people. And so I'm going to give you a quick lowdown on how to effectively interview people for your documentary. Big thing is you have to plan. You have to talk with the person or people that you're going to interview, the talent, and find out where, when, all the particulars that you need to know and that they need to know so that you can effectively do your interview. You should tell them what they should wear, no crazy prints, no crazy or any really stripes, kind of plays havoc with some video. For women, big clunky necklaces aren't great when you're using lavaliers, and you guys probably won't be using lavaliers, but they still will make noise. And then a lot of people ask you, well, can you give me a list of interview questions? You don't want to do that. You can say, well, what we're going to talk about is this. This is what we want to know. So be thinking about that stuff, right? Because if you give them questions ahead of time, it will sound very scripted and not very authentic. And then after you've got that all figured out, you need to do some other things. You need to plan for the location, right? So if you're shooting somewhere on location, which most of you probably would be, you should try to scope it out before you go shoot, like days before you go shoot, not like the same day, if possible, and look at any backgrounds and how that clothing might interact with that background. So if you have a bright orange background, you might tell people don't wear bright green because it's not gonna, it may clash, right? Also, you should make a thorough list of the equipment that you need. Now, you guys are using probably your phones, but you might also be using cameras. In any case, things need to be charged, and you have batteries. If you're bringing lights or you're using sort of DIY lighting, you'll want to make sure you have that. You make sure you have, memory cards for your cameras if you're using that, AC cords, anything you might need. I like to also draw a little map of the location. It says if on location. Oh yeah, draw a map if it's on location. And so here's an example. I did this in PowerPoint, but typically I would just do this by hand, and I am not an artist. It doesn't matter. It's just so that you remember what you saw when you were there scouting it out. So this would be an example of I was going to shoot in somebody's office, and they had a big desk with a chair behind it. That maybe that's where they would be sitting, and there's a plant right behind them that might be sticking out of their head. So you might move the chair or move the plant or figure out a better way to do that. I also like to know where if there's a window so I can use that natural lighting instead of electrical lighting, which might benefit you guys since you don't have a lot of equipment probably at your disposal. I also like to look for other places where you might shoot all of the interview or parts of the interview. And so in this fictitious office, there's a couch, and behind that is a painting, and maybe that painting is a good background, but maybe it's not. So you have to think about all those things, and if you write them down, you'll probably remember. So once you've done all your pre-stuff, it comes to the day that you're going to do an interview. There's some things that will help you out. So get there early. If it's on location, give yourself lots of time before the interview is supposed to officially start. So if you tell the person you're interviewing that we're going to interview at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., you should be there at 1 or even earlier. Give yourself lots of time. Everything will be less stressful. Think about and set up any equipment that you have. So if you have, your camera, even if it's a phone, how are you going to, is it going to be on a tripod? Are you going to be holding it? That's fine if you have to, but you need to know where you're going to be standing and at what level the camera should be. So all that should be set up. Where are you putting the talent or the person you're interviewing them? And remember, try to look behind them to make sure nothing weird is sticking out of their head. And then if you're using any lighting, whether it's lighting fixtures or it's natural lighting, because this could be outdoors as well, or it could be somewhere where there's a nice window. Make sure that you've placed your talent and camera in a position to take advantage of any natural light if you need to. And then, pay attention to the background. I already told you. Big thing, test the equipment before the talent arrives, and especially the audio. The audio is probably the roughest thing. So you guys probably won't have microphones, but if external microphones, but if you do, test that equipment before the people show up. And then even if you don't, test your audio. Make sure that your audio is recording well and that you're getting a good signal in the situation that you're in. And then once your talent, your interviewee comes, and if you have an external mic them. And then, but in any case, after they get there, sit them in their chair or make them stand where you're going to have them stand, and then do an audio test. Record some footage of them, talking at a norm. You can just roll it and ask them some, like, hey, so what do you think about the weather? Some casual questions, and then listen to that. And if you've got earphones or even earbuds that you can listen to the recording that you just made, you can tell if it's good or not. If you're outside or somewhere where you don't have an external mic and you listen to that recording, which if you do that even before they show up, it's better. You may decide that's not the best place to record, because sometimes you don't hear stuff. You hear it, but you don't pay attention to it until you hear it recorded and played back. So just be careful of that. Audio is the hardest thing. It's half the battle. We've talked about that before. So be careful with that. And then other things you might need to set up. Well, you need to figure out where you're going to put the camera. So the interviewer should be close to the camera. A lot of people will do interviews where people are looking way off to the side of the camera, and it's kind of awkward. You don't want them talking to the camera. You want them talking, but you want them almost talking to the camera. It makes the viewer feel like they are more part of the situation, that they're actually there. Both the interviewer and the talent, or the person that's being interviewed, should be eye level with the camera lens. So all three, if you have one camera, an interviewer, and then someone who's being interviewed, should all be eye level. Eye level interviewer with the person being interviewed, and also with the camera lens. It also that will give your viewers that feeling that they're there, right? That they're part of this. And then if you put the interviewer on the right of the camera, and then you're going to go back and interview them on another day or in a different location, make sure you put that interviewer on that same side. You want to be consistent with that. The big thing is make sure that camera is eye level with the person being interviewed. So this is one way. This is how you would set up an interview. So you have, if you had your 3 lights with the 3-point lighting that we learned back in GIT 315, that's great. But even if you don't, you can use natural light to light this up. The camera and the interviewer should be as close to the camera as they can be, without touching it, really. And then the interviewee, the person being interviewed, will talk to the interviewer, not to the camera. So the camera should be eye level with the interviewee, and with the person doing the interview. So you get to the actual interview. There's a few things you can do. I like to give a few pointers before we start. I tell them to talk to the person interviewing, to talk to me and not to the camera. You want to try to get them to forget the camera's there, honestly. Tell them you're just having a conversation. And then if questions are not part of the finished video, the people have to answer in complete sentences. So unless you're showing both the interviewer and the interviewee, and you're only showing the interviewee, the person being interviewed, then you should not hear the interviewer at all. All right? And because of that, you need the people you're interviewing to answer in complete questions. You can't say stuff like, so, did you like, skiing down Mount Kilimanjaro? Well, they can say yes or no. And then you can't use that in your video. So you have to make sure that they answer in complete questions. And I'm going to give you a hint about that as well. Another thing that I do that I tell them is to not feel offended if there's more than one person on the crew, because often anyone who's not interviewing the talent should try not to make eye contact with the person being interviewed, because it's human nature for us to want to include everybody in the room. So if you're making eye contact with that person, they're going to not just talk to the interviewer, they're going to talk to everybody in the room. And that's not what you want. You want them talking to the person doing the interview. So I tell them, don't feel offended if nobody looks up at you. Everyone's paying attention. And I tell them this. We don't want you looking at them. Okay, so the interview itself, I always tell them first to give their names and any other important information, like, where they work and what their role is. I'm probably not going to use that in the video, but I'm going to use lower thirds, which is, the text on the screen with their names and their positions or company. I chat with them. I tell them, I chat with them before we get started, just to kind of loosen them up a little bit. I also like to tell them, I'm jumping the gun, but I also like to tell them that the questions will not be part of the interview or the video, so that they do need to answer in those complete sentences. And then you may even have to say, that's a great thing. What you just said was great. Can you rephrase it? Say it again, but say it in a complete sentence. I also, as an interviewer, try not to interrupt the person talking or make any noises. That means you can't laugh. You can't go, yes, or any kind of noises, because you won't be able to edit those out. So instead, you nod your head, you smile, you look encouraging, or if they're saying something distressing, you commiserate with them, but you have to do all that silently. And then I always say, you have things you want to talk about, but they'll have things they want to talk about, and you never know what will come out of that on the documentary. The big thing is avoid yes or no questions. So my approach to not asking yes or no questions is to not ask questions. And instead I give prompts. So I say things like, tell me about the time when you were, when you got your puppy dog. Or give me a picture about why you like to live in, I don't know, wherever. Kansas City. Then they have to say, well, I live in Kansas City because I like the blah, 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 right? Instead of saying, do you like living in Kansas City? Yes. That is not anything we need. We can't edit that. Another way to say it is just tell me a story about. So you give prompts instead of questions. And I still accidentally give questions every once in a while. But I usually have to back up and say, you know what, can you tell me that again? In a complete sentence. If you want to be in if you want the interviewer questions to be in the video, you also, as the interviewer, need to be in the video. And the audio needs to be good for both people, not just the person being interviewed. A lot of people don't do that. I see documentaries all the time, but for this class, this is the best way to do it. Not for this class. This is the best way to do it. For this class, that's what you need to do. But for this project that we're doing here, actually, we shouldn't see or hear you as the interviewer. You need to be able to take what the person being interviewed says and build a story around that without using interviewer questions and without using titles on screens with the questions. We shouldn't see or hear the questions at all. Okay. If you want to use 2 cameras, if you're so lucky to have those, and one can be a regular camera, one could be a phone, or there could be 2 different people's phones, I don't care. What you do is, oops, I kind of cut it off there, but what you do is you set 2 cameras, you're going to start them recording at the same time. One will be, they will just have different shots, different framing. So the one on the left you see is a medium shot. It's basically from the waist up to the top of the head, and the one on the right is a closer up shot, and that just makes it easy to edit because you can edit between those and you don't get any of those dreaded jump cuts. So this is how you would set it up. So one would be more zoomed in, more zoomed in than the other, but do you see that camera 1 and camera 2 are also still on the same side as the interviewer? So the camera 1 would be the main interview camera, the main camera, because it's very close to the interview, and camera 2 could be the other one that it switches to every once in a while. And so this, I'm not going to show this to you. I'll post this URL in the module, but this is a great example of shooting a documentary style interview and really editing it, putting it together.